hey everyone, welcome to Journey Church Online. We're glad you guys joined us today, and we're your online hosts for today. My name is Mark.
And I'm Katie, glad you're here, and church will start in just a few minutes.
Yeah, we hope you guys are having a great spring. It's finally here in Michigan, taking time to warm up a little bit.
Finally.
But Katie, what about you guys? What about you and your family? What are you guys doing this spring right now?
So other than spring sports, we have a backyard renovation kind of going.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, we always have our garden. My husband and my daughter, that's their thing. They like to plant the garden.
Yeah.
And it's really sweet.
I'm doing a garden. I did it last year, and we're going to do year number 2 this year. So we're going to
What do you plant in your garden?
Well, we did some tomatoes last year and eggplant. My wife likes that, eggplant parmesan. I'm trying to figure out what we should plant in our garden this year. I'm not really sure
Maybe
yet.
we can help you.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys could comment below what you think Mark should plant in his garden.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. So I have a few ideas.
Okay.
But yeah, in the comments, you guys write down what should I plant in my garden. But whatever vegetable you want, and whatever gets the most nominations, I'll try it. I'll try planting that in the garden.
If I could vote right now, I would say hot peppers.
Okay, I might try that. Can you grow those in Michigan?
I don't know.
All right.
Hopefully.
We'll see what votes you guys give us in the comments below.
Well, anyway, we've got some things coming up this month, the month of May, some exciting opportunities. So you could check out our blog. It's where we have all the information, all the opportunities coming up. And one that I'd like to highlight today is that we are hosting a virtual Discover the Journey event. It's for anyone who's kind of new around our church, where you can learn about our church and some different opportunities coming up. But we love creating these type of opportunities for connection. So we'd love to have you sign up. So you can find that on the blog. You could also find our Connect card. You can utilize that to request information or to submit a prayer request, because we have a prayer team. We'd love to be praying for you.
Yeah, and again, just let us know if we can help you take steps in either way. Check out the blog for all of that. But today we're going to continue on in our series that we've been in all month long, and it's going to go for a little while, these several weeks of encounters with Christ. And we hope you're encountering Christ in your everyday life. So let's get ready to start church online and encounter Christ together.
Again, welcome to Journey Church Online. We're glad that you are joining us. And here at The Journey, we are a church about relationships, not religion. So And that means that we believe that it's through a personal relationship with God that you will live your best life. So wherever you're at in your journey, we're glad you're here. And if you're kind of new around here, we're really glad you're joining us today, and we would love to connect with you. So on our blog, you will find our guest card, and that's a way that we can connect with you. Again, we're glad you're joining us. Also on the blog, you can find links to giving and being a part of our mission, and thank you so much for your generosity for being a part of that. So as we begin our service today, my hope and prayer for you is that you can encounter Christ. So I'd like to say a quick prayer before we begin our worship songs to sing together. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to encounter you. And as we begin our service today and through these worship songs, our prayer today is that we can turn our hearts and focus towards you. Amen.
I've searched the world, it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise, treasures of fade, never enough. Then you came along, put me back together. Is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing is better than you. 'Cause I know it's true. I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is
love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Oh, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running, it keeps running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. I'm gonna sing, I'm gonna sing, oh, 'cause all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able,
Well, have you ever felt like an outsider? Like you didn't belong, you didn't fit in. Maybe it was because it was a new environment, a place that you'd never been. Maybe it was just with a group of people that you didn't know, you hadn't been around before. I've been in a number of those situations. I remember one when I was with my youngest son, Will, in his 1 year of Cub Scouts, and we went to a father-son overnight camp, and we were sitting at a picnic table, some of the dads were, and they were all talking about people and places that I didn't know, but they seemed to all know. And I just asked at the table, I said, how long have you guys known each other? And 4 out of like the 5 at the table had known each other since elementary school, at the same elementary where our kids were going now. Like, no wonder I felt like an outsider. I've also felt like an outsider at times in some of the rooms and the places and the people that I've found myself in different situations. There was actually a Zoom group that I was a part of when this pandemic started that I was invited into with about 8 or 9 other pastors. And when I showed up for that Zoom group, which was going to meet every other week, I realized the group of pastors that I was with, like, they were incredible leaders of super large churches. And it was one of those, like, which one of these is not like the other? Like, somehow they got some misinformation about me or the journey. Like, how was I in that room? And it just felt like I was like, ho-de-do, ho-de-do. Well, they were these amazing leaders. And I don't know what it is for you. Maybe because of your past, or maybe it's a lack of whatever that you have just felt at times like maybe you're an outsider. Maybe it was, again, with a group of people that you just didn't know, or a situation that you weren't familiar with, and it felt like you were on the outside looking in. Lots of people feel that way when it comes to faith, when it comes to walking in the doors of a church for the first time. And if we're honest, religion oftentimes hasn't helped. Religion, kind of classically, religion seems to be about being good enough or not good enough, behaving or not behaving, the outsiders and the insiders. And man, at the journey, I've seen that so often, where people have walked through the doors of the church for the first time, and they were sure that they were going to be an outsider. Like Linda, who came in and was shaking like a leaf, like you could visibly just see her shaking as she walked through the doors of the church for the first time. Or my friend Jason, who we were in a group with 8 to 10 people in a living room who were all new to the journey, and we just were going around the room kind of sharing who we were. And he says, hey, I'm Jason. I smoke like a chimney. I swear like a sailor. I love to gamble. And if I'm going to hell because of it, then I'm going to have a great ride. And he said that just wanting to see how we would respond. And he actually thought for sure that he knew how we would respond and that he would be kicked out. Of course, he wasn't. But so often we kind of look around and we think, I'm an outsider. There's no way I'm going to be welcome here. But, you know, our mission at the journey right from the very start has been for the outsider, for the person who's skeptical or questioning, curious. It's been our mission from the start because, well, it's Jesus' mission. And as pretentious and off-putting as you might think religious people are, Jesus kind of thought that too. Well, hey, I'm Paul. I'm one of the pastors here at the Journey, and we're in the 3rd week of a series that we're calling Encounters with Christ. And in this series, we're talking about encounters that Jesus had with people, as we see in the New Testament of the Bible, and in particular the book of Mark, and how those encounters with people changed them, how it shows us things about who Jesus is, and, well, about how we can have our own encounter as well. All series long, we're in the book of Mark. It's the 2nd book of the New Testament. It's a biography of Jesus' life. It was written by a guy named John Mark, but he was actually writing down the stories and accounts of a guy named Peter, who was one of Jesus' closest friends. And throughout this series, we hope that you will encounter Christ as well. And one of the ways that we're doing that together is that we're encouraging everybody to spend 4 days a week reading the Bible on some level and 4 minutes a day praying. That might be a big step for you. It might not. But together we want to dive into the book of Mark and encounter Christ ourselves. One of the ways that you can kind of do that or find out more information about that is by going to our website and checking out the blog. On the blog, you'll see a couple different ways in which you can dive into the book of Mark through a Bible reading plan, or maybe it's even just reading 2 chapters of Mark each week. But we encourage you to take that step and, again, have your own encounter with Christ as well. Well, today, we're going to experience another encounter with Christ, and it's somebody who knew what it was like to be an outsider. His story is found in Mark chapter 2, verse 13 through 16. Mark chapter 2, verse 13 through 16. We read this. Once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him, and Levi got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And when the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they asked the disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" So Jesus is out by the Sea of Galilee in Israel. He's walking along the crowded lake shore, and there's people all around wanting to see Jesus, hear from Jesus, maybe experience a miracle, hear his teaching. And as he's walking along and teaching and talking, he sees Levi and he invites him to follow him. Now, Levi was a tax collector, and we've talked about this at the Journey many times, but tax collectors were hated. They were hated because they were Jewish people working for the Roman government, and the Jewish people saw the Romans as occupiers in their homeland. And so they were taking the people's money for the Roman government. Tax collectors were so hated that they weren't allowed to be a witness in a court of law. They were excommunicated from the synagogue, the Jewish church, and they were reviled by everybody. Matter of fact, that anger towards them not only went to them, but also to their parents, to their siblings. Yet it was also a very lucrative job. This actually was probably this toll gate was like a toll booth. Like think about driving to Chicago and you have to stop at the toll booth. He's on the road between Damascus and the Sea of Galilee, and here he is at his toll booth. The way that you became a toll collector or a tax collector was that you would actually pay the Roman government for the privilege of being the tax collector, and then the Roman government would allow you to charge taxes on top of their taxes to make back your expenses and to make a profit. And there really was no end to what they could tax, and so they were taxing upon tax. And again, that made everybody angry at a guy like Levi. And Jesus invites him to follow him. I'm guessing the crowds, the disciples, had to be losing their mind. Like, what are you talking about? Like, how could Jesus invite a tax collector to follow him? How could he invite him, of all people, to follow him? He's supposed to be a holy man, and he's inviting this kind of person to come and follow him. I love that Levi just gets up and leaves everything. I think that's what Jesus actually wants from each one of us, a willingness to simply follow him. Well, Levi was making big money, and yet he leaves it all. Why? Well, no matter how much money you make, when you're hated by everybody, when every time you go to the market, people are whispering and giving you the stink eye, when they walk past your house and you hear them talking poorly about you, when they spit at your feet, when they step away from you, when every time people see you, you see the hate in their eyes. Like, how much money do you have to make so that you don't care about any of that? And I'm guessing along the way, there was some moments when Levi, man, he wished he could take back that decision that he made way back in the day to be a tax collector in the first place. But it was too late. Until Jesus says to follow me. I mean, Levi knew what it was like to be an outsider. He knew what it was like to be hated. He knew what it was like to burn all of his bridges, and when Jesus throws him this lifeline, he takes it and he runs with it. He wants to experience this new life. And the truth is, I think this is maybe the first time, or at least the first time in a long time, that anybody has wanted, has welcomed in, has invited Levi to be a part of something bigger and better than himself. Jesus invites the outsider in. Now, the very next scene, there's a party at Levi's house. Right, so he invites him to follow him, and then it says, hey, Jesus is over at Levi's house, and all these tax collectors and sinners are there, and kind of there's this big party happening, and the Pharisees, the religious leaders, are watching kind of from a distance. They're talking to his disciples, like, why is he eating with all of these tax collectors and sinners? Like, it's bad enough that he invited Levi to follow him. Now there's all of these tax collectors and sinners. Why is Jesus hanging around with those kinds of people? You know, in those days, they in their homes, they oftentimes would have a courtyard. And they would have a fence or a stone wall or something like that that would kind of protect the courtyard from the road and from the rest of the community. But you could peer over and you could look, and that's the picture that we have. These Pharisees not getting too close to the riffraff, but looking in and watching and seeing what's going on. And they're talking to the disciples. And I don't know if the disciples don't want to be with that crew either, or if they've come over to talk to the religious leaders. But the religious leaders, I mean, they wouldn't have anything to do with the kind of people that Jesus was hanging out with. Why would he hang out with those kinds of people, which is classic religion? Well, the very next verse, we see Jesus overhears them. And he says this, on hearing this, Jesus said to them, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I've not come to call the righteous, but sinners. That was a traditional proverb. It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Kind of like it's the early bird that gets the worm. Like we would all know it, and they would all know this phrase. And in that culture, in that day, like you didn't go for annual physicals. You didn't go for checkups. You went to the doctor when you were sick, you couldn't figure it out, and you needed help. And then he goes on, he says, I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. And in that, I think there's some sarcasm directed at the religious leaders, because the religious leaders, they thought they were righteous. They thought they were healthy. They had no need for Jesus. They were all about religion, and they were better than everybody else at it. But they didn't realize their own sickness. As Jesus' mission was for those who were sick, not those who thought that they were healthy. For sinners, not those who thought that they were righteous. Jesus' mission was for the outsider, the imperfect, the not good enough, but the person that realized, I need him. Like, I'm not good enough. You know, Jesus was accused of being a friend of sinners, and he was. He was accused of being a friend of sinners, and some of the religious leaders even thought he was a drunk because of who he hung out with. Jesus' integrity and character were under attack because of the people that he oftentimes surrounded himself with, and he didn't seem to care because this was his mission. It was his mission. He came for the sick, not the healthy. People who knew they needed him, not the other way around. And listen, his mission was for the outsider. In Luke chapter 19, verse 10, it's the next book in the New Testament. Jesus says, I've come to seek and save the lost. I love that phrase. I've come to seek and save the lost. And it really goes back, and now we look at him seeing Levi, right? He saw Levi. He didn't just kind of in the periphery, but he looked in the middle of this crowd as he's talking and teaching. He sees Levi. He gazed at him. Actually, the word used there is like this look, this stare, this gaze. He sees him. And he sees you. Or we see this all the time in the life of Jesus. That he's going around, there's crowds, and he sees this person, and he sees that person, and he invites the outsider in, and he sees you. Your pain, your struggle, your longings, your questions, your doubts. He sees it all. And he invites you in. He invites you into relationship with him. He came for you. And if you've ever felt like an outsider, Jesus says it's simply not true with him. He invites the outsider in. And he sees you no matter what your story and what you've been through. Well, Jesus was hanging out with these tax collectors and sinners. But the truth is, we're all sinners. We're all in that same boat. We've all fallen short. We all need Jesus. We're all an outsider at some level, whether we realize it or not. The religious don't. That's why we talk about we're about relationships, not religion. Like, religion is empty. These religious leaders, they thought they were fine. They didn't see a need for Jesus. Do you see your need for him? We're all outsiders on some level. So if you've ever felt like that, listen, Jesus came for you, and he invites the outsider in. Now, for the follower of Jesus, if you've been following Jesus and you've been walking with him, you've accepted him as your Savior, you're trying to live his ways imperfectly, yes, and mess it up at times, absolutely, but you're striving to live for him. Maybe you've even grown up in church most your life. It may, especially if you've grown up in church all your life, it may almost be uncomfortable how comfortable Jesus was with people who weren't like him. And people who weren't like him seemed to like him because, well, they sensed that he liked them too. And listen, we have to be comfortable with people who aren't like us as well. We're called to live on the same mission that Jesus had, which is to help the outsider, just like us, in, to connect with him and have a heart for the other person, for the outsider. Now, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a Christian, we need other followers in our life. It's important, right? We need people to pray for us and encourage us and support us, and we need to do the same. People who are kind of thinking the same way about mission and caring for others. We need that. We need that support. But we have to guard ourselves against just being a part of a holy huddle. We were designed to live on mission. It's why Jesus came. It was his mission right from the very start, to seek and save the lost. And we're called to the same. We're an outsider who's been invited in to help other outsiders be invited in as well. In Mark chapter 2, verse 15 again, it says, while Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. I love this picture of Jesus showing compassion to Levi, seeing him and inviting him in, and then Levi immediately inviting Jesus to his house and inviting all of his friends to come and meet Jesus, right? All these tax collectors and sinners, probably because, well, those are the only people that would actually hang out with Levi in the first place. Those are the only people that are going to show up to his house. Those are the only other people that are going to understand kind of his story and probably his only friends. And so he invites all of his friends to come and meet Jesus. He starts by spreading some kindness and inviting them to a meal, and then they look to share hope. You know, I wonder if Jesus brought that crew of people that were at Levi's house, the ones that the religious leaders were like, why is Jesus eating with those people? If Jesus brought that group of people to most of our churches in the United States today, how many people who call themselves Christians or consider themselves religious would be uncomfortable with the group that Jesus brought to church? Isn't that crazy? We're to be for the outsider. You know, Levi experiences hope, and then he shares hope, and he does it through spreading kindness first. You know, at the Journey, we talk about a growth pathway, a spiritual formation, a way that we can really begin to experience our best life. We talk about following Jesus, spreading kindness, sharing hope, and that we're better together. Levi follows Jesus, and then he begins to spread kindness. He invites his friends to come and meet Jesus, and together with Jesus, they share hope. David Kinnaman, who's an author and pastor, has said to not share that hope with people. If we truly believe our best life is found in relationship with Jesus, and that everyone's best life is found in relationship with Jesus, to not share that hope with others ultimately is even unkind. At a recent staff meeting, we were talking about this last year in the United States and all the division that we've seen. Whether it's racial division or division with COVID and mask and no mask and different rules and what's true and not true and politics and all of it. And how the church oftentimes, the church at large, not necessarily the Journey, but the church at large, has come across as uncaring or unloving. How the church has gotten, in many people's eyes, a more and more negative view. And we were just talking as a staff about how leading with compassion and spreading kindness is going to matter more than ever before. That when we lead with kindness and compassion and people experience that, that's different than how they are oftentimes viewing the church or what they've experienced with church. And it opens up their heart to see Jesus. That compassion and kindness, leading with that, gives credibility for us to share hope courageously. Compassion and kindness gives credibility to share hope courageously. Like, we need to do both. If you're a follower of Jesus, we have to be willing to share the hope that we have in Jesus, but we lead with compassion and kindness. And this is what Levi does. And it's what Jesus did. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to picture a diagram of a pie. And this is kind of typical living, right? Where we've got these different pieces of the pie that make up our life, right? Maybe it's work or home, neighborhood, family, hobbies, entertainment, whatever it might be. We've got these different segments of the pie, and maybe one of them is God or church, Jesus. And so often what happens in typical living is that this segment of church, God, Jesus, it just kind of stays at its own little piece of the pie. It doesn't ever infiltrate or bleed over into any of the other areas. But this is not the Jesus way of living. The Jesus way of living, how we experience our very best life, is that Jesus is the center. And so if you picture a pie with those different segments, you have Jesus at the center. And so each segment, Jesus infiltrates. Each segment, Jesus bleeds into. And so what I want you to do is just think, just for a moment, what are the segments of your life? Maybe it's school and family, or work and neighborhood, hobbies, whatever it might be. Think about those different areas. Jesus at the center. He's to infiltrate every area of our life. Now here's what I want you to do as you think about those different segments. Who are the people that quickly come to mind, at least a few of them, in each one of those segments? At school, maybe the other students that you're closest to. At work, those who work closest to you, and maybe your neighbors, your family members. God has placed you primarily where he has for you to primarily spread kindness and share hope with those people. The people in your pie, the people where Jesus is the center and he's infiltrating into each of those different areas, and you're called primarily to spread kindness and to share hope with those people. There will always be random others, of course, but God has primarily given you those people, and you know people that I don't, and I know people that you don't. You have the opportunity to spread kindness and to share hope, to help others experience what you've experienced, for outsiders to be invited in. And your compassion as you lead with that, your kindness as you lead with that, gives credibility for you to share hope courageously. So this week, identify who's in your circle. And then I want to encourage you to look for opportunities to spread kindness and to share hope with those in your circle. You know, this has been our mission at the Journey for 17 years. To connect in relationships, not religion, so as many people as possible along the lakeshore can experience their very best life. People like Jason, and Linda, who was shaking like a leaf when she showed up to the Journey. Or Tammy, who shared her story a few weeks ago here at the Journey, and how she walked in and was skeptical and questioning, and she heard you two playing and thought, okay, there might be some people here kind of like me. Or like Jimmy and Jenny shared their story a few weeks ago as well. And Jimmy didn't share this in his video story during our My Story series, but he's all tatted up and pierced, and he's always felt judged in most environments and most religious environments. We created the Journey 17 years ago to be on mission like Jesus on mission for the outsider, to invite the outsider in. It's been our mission, and nothing has changed. And matter of fact, that mission is more important than ever before. And if not us, who? And if not now, when? The Journey's always been for people, well, people like Russ and Darla, who, when they showed up at the Journey many years ago, were a little unsure if God really would want anything to do with them. But they were invited in, and they encountered Jesus. And dozens and dozens and dozens of people have come to the Journey and been invited in and encountered Jesus because they spread kindness and they shared hope. And they invited others to meet Jesus with them and help outsiders in. That has been and always will be our mission. If you're somebody who's exploring, you're checking God out, maybe not really sure what you believe, maybe you feel like an outsider when it comes to church or faith, Jesus invites you in. He sees you and he loves you. He invites you to be a part of his family, to be an outsider who's welcomed in. If you're somebody who's following Jesus this week, think about that pie with Jesus at the center, infiltrating these different areas of our lives, and think about the people that God has placed in your path, in your sphere of influence. This week, how can you spread kindness with those people? As you spread kindness, you lead with compassion. It gives credibility for you to share hope courageously. Let's live this out together. And when we do, not only do we encounter Christ, but those around us can encounter Christ too. Let's pray together. God, I pray that you'd help us this week to encounter you in fresh and new ways. God, to really believe and know in the depths of our soul that no matter how much of an outsider we have felt, that you've invited us in. And then, God, would you help us to be on mission with you, to spread kindness, to share hope, to lead with compassion and kindness, and may that give us the credibility to share hope courageously. God, you've put a certain amount of people within our sphere of influence in all these different segments of our life, whether it's work or school or family, neighborhood, hobbies, whatever it might be. God, would you help us? Would you show us? Would you give us eyes to see? Would you give us a heart for the outsider? Would you help us to lead with compassion and kindness, and then share hope courageously, that others might have an encounter with you too. And for the person who feels like they're an outsider, God, I pray that they would know to the depths of their soul today, even in this moment, God, that you would reveal it to them, that you love them and you're inviting them in, no matter what their story. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Paul, for sharing with us today. And I want to remind you all to join us tomorrow for our Monday Remix as we start the new week and do a little recap of our service today. I also want to encourage you to be taking steps in developing a habit of encountering Christ throughout the whole week. And a goal we're having together as a church right now is we take time every week to read our Bibles and praying. And if you are kind of new to that and developing that habit, just try to do it 4 times every week, reading the Bible, reflecting on that, in a time of prayer. And there's resources on the blog and kind of a guide to develop that. And we're trying to all read through the book of Mark together over these next several weeks. So again, check that out on the blog, as well as seeing some other next step opportunities for the month of May. And parents, you also see the resources on there to help your kids encounter Christ. And you can gather them up right now and find those resources on the blog and do that with them. Well, thanks again for joining us today for Church Online. And this next week, let's follow Jesus. Let's spread kindness, share hope, and remember, we are better together.